next relief package before the recess August 7th. So let's bring in this week's players. Satya Marar and Lakai Vincent, good morning to both of you. It's good to see you. Welcome to Fox 5.
Hey, good to be here.
Let me start with Lakai. Let me start with you first of all. When it comes to getting schools back in session, a lot of people, the longer this goes on, are starting to say, "Look, let's just make it across the board. Let's go virtual everywhere." What's your take on this?
So I believe that the Trump administration has made it very clear that they want everyone to do in-person learning. The CDC initially had guidelines out there for all schools to follow if they wanted in-person learning. In July, President Trump put out a tweet that he believed that the CDC guidelines were impractical. I believe that if they're impractical, then that means the only way that these students can learn on day one is virtually. We have to make sure that students are safe and that they're protected. And so I think there's no question that they should start off virtually. We can assess at every point and decide if they can change that to in-person, but I think initially we need to start with virtual learning.
All right, your team, virtual learning then. Such an education policy analyst, what have you to say this morning?
Look, every child is different, every family is different, and some families have absolutely struggled with remote learning. What you see happening now is parents have to now act like facilitators, to fill in the gaps with the in-person instruction that a lot of the kids aren't getting, and some of them are really struggling. What I say is this, there are a number of parents who prefer, fully virtual education. They're concerned about the virus. There's other parents who are absolutely keen to get the children back into school for a sense of normalcy. What I say is this, let the parents be the ones who can really make those decisions. If they're happy with their school's chosen option, then that's very great. If they're struggling with virtual learning and they could use some extra support, such as by hiring a private instructor to help them out a little bit, or forming groups of other parents and so on, then I believe that some of the money that we're allocating for that child's education should be able to go to the parents to spend on these extra education expenses. That's how we really support families at a time like this. There is no one-size-fits-all approach that is best for every child. A lot of children have lost almost a year of learning, and it's important that we support what works for each person.
Look, Kai, real quick before we move on to the next topic, I mean, is that possible? Do you see the possibility, the reality that you could take some of that money and say, here, you could use it for your own personal preference?
I think that's a novel idea, and while it's great if we could do that and if each state could do that, I don't necessarily think it's realistic. We know that everyone is trying to determine their new normal, and unfortunately, some children will have to learn out of the traditional classroom setting in order for us to initiate this school year.
All right, let's move on to our second topic of the day, as we call it in our Monday morning quarterbacks, our second half of the day. So, Satya, I want to start with you right now. When it comes to this next relief plan, Republicans are getting ready, of course, to say, look, we're going to put another stimulus check out there. What they don't want to do, though, is continue those extra unemployment payments that are due to expire at the end of the week. So what's your take on how we move forward here on out?
Look, firstly, what I mentioned before is already happening in places like Arizona. They have education savings accounts that work for kids in special needs circumstances. And right now, virtually every kid in the country is in a very special circumstance where learning is disrupted. Regarding the funding package that could come in, the federal one, look, I think it's important that funding is targeted in the areas where there is the most need. One of the issues with the last, the financial crisis in 2009 was that a lot of the funding ended up, disproportionately going to schools in more property wealthy areas, when really there should be proportionately more funding for low-income students and for students who live in areas where the property wealth isn't that high, because those are the areas most reliant on state revenues, from sales tax and so on, which tend to dip massively during economic turmoil. So I think we need to better target where those funds are going and learn from mistakes of 10 years ago.
Okay, what do you think about the package that's being proposed right now as far as stimulating, I guess, the economy and those who are out of work or currently struggling due to COVID?
Well, I certainly think it's necessary. There are over 21 million people that are unemployed right now. And so we certainly need to extend the unemployment benefits if we can provide more stimulus checks to families that need it. And I think we need to focus on those that may not have received it the first time around, because we don't want any family to be overlooked or missed out on this potential stimulus package when they, in fact, need it.
All right, let's move on into a bonus segment here. Maybe this is our 2-minute drill at the end of the football game. Lakai, I'm going to start with you. D.C. announced a list of states this morning. If you visit these states for non-essential travel and you come back to D.C., you are supposed to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. That includes North Carolina, Lakai. So that means if you come visit us, you're going to be sitting somewhere for a couple of weeks before you hang out. What do you think about these cities and these areas that are putting in these restrictions? Is it too much? Is it just enough?
Listen, it is not ideal, but I think that it is enough. Unfortunately, when you're traveling from different states, you don't know what those individuals have been doing, what symptoms they may have, and whether or not they, in fact, have corona. So unfortunately, I completely understand and sympathize with these states and making sure that the people within their state are protected. So I think it's a yay.
Satya, if you left D.C. and then you came back, would you be willing to self-quarantine for 2 weeks?
Look, I mean, if the health advisors are saying that, then I would trust their expertise. I think at the end of the day, though, a better solution would be to offer testing at the airports for anyone who's willing to do it and who's willing to, pay whatever cost there is. And if someone is clearly not a carrier of the virus, then I don't see a reason why they need to be self-quarantined. But that being said, if there are other issues where that wouldn't work out, then certainly, look, we need to defer to the experts on these matters. Certainly
an interesting workaround. And just for viewers to know, if you drive through one of these states on your way to D.C., that doesn't count. You have to actually spend some time in those high-risk states, 27 of them, though, across the country. Thank you both for joining us. Lakai, it's been a pleasure talking with you both. Thanks for joining us for Monday Morning Quarterbacks.
Thank you.
Absolutely. 7:37. Angie?
All right.